Hello, Hokie Nation, and welcome to the Sideline Podcast. This is episode 126. We are coming to you live from the high-tech Sideline studios located here at the one and only Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. We have a packed show for you today, including two new transfer commits for basketball and football. Dalton Keene is headed to New England to become a Patriot, and much more coming your way. This is all brought to you by the Fisher Law Firm. And without further ado, let's get right into the news. Welcome back to the Sideline Podcast. This is episode 126, and whether you are here listening in on Facebook Live or watching on YouTube or just listening on Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud, we are so glad you could join us today. We have a big podcast today. This is live on Monday, April 27th, and we have a lot to talk about, including a look back on some previous games that were broadcast yesterday on the ACC network, a couple transfer commits on both sports, basketball and football. But first, let's meet the crew for today's podcast. I am obviously not Evan Hughes. I will be hosting today's podcast, however. I am Nick Brown. We have the general manager and head honcho, Will Stewart, wow, and the managing editor, Chris Coleman, and obviously the man behind the camera is Malcolm Stewart, who is now taking your questions live at the end. We will answer that at the end of the episode. And now, Mr. Stewart, I heard you have a nice promo for us.
Yes, I will probably talk way too long. So some house cleaning here. We welcome Nick to the show. Nick is actually still technically a Radford High School senior, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
Until I graduate.
So we welcome Nick Brown in. I've known Nick for years. Same age as my daughter Annalise. His dad has taught two of my kids at Radford High. So you are accepted into Virginia Tech for next year, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to be in Bill Roth's Sports Media and Analytics program, right?
Yep.
Right.
That's right.
So that's why we've got Nick here. We were planning on breaking Nick in anyway, and with all the stuff going on, we figured we'd go ahead and put him to work early since Evan can't be here. So it's really cool because we needed a local guy. Last summer when Nick went off to Minnesota,
when Evan went off to Minnesota.
Sorry, Evan.
That's Nick.
See, it's so hard to get names right,
Everybody's getting names wrong.
When Evan went to Minnesota, we what did we do during the summer? Did we do podcasts? I don't remember.
I don't think we did.
If we did, I'm sure they weren't very good because I probably had to host them. So I was like, great. When Nick got accepted into Bill Roth's program, I was like, awesome. We got somebody local who, until you get further down the line and you start getting jobs and stuff like that, we'll have you around to do some podcasts during the summer. So that's why we're breaking Nick in, and we welcome Nick to the show. And for our sponsor promo, I wanted to get that in early. Jonathan Fisher is doing something a little different. We talked about this on the last podcast. Jonathan is offering estate planning services at the Fisher Law Firm. And if you utilize him now for your estate planning services, you will get a free subscription to Sideline. So if you've got an existing subscription, we'll extend it for you, or you can donate it to somebody else. If you don't have a subscription, you'll get one for the first time ever, and you'll be like, why haven't I done this all along? Look what I've been missing out on. So to take advantage of that, let me get Jonathan's info out here. Evan knows it by heart. I do not. You can hit Jonathan up at info@fisherlegal.com, or you can call 1-800-680-7031. And on a personal note, my dad passed away. It's been about a year ago. It was April 13th of last year. And my dad was very good about getting his stuff taken care of. He had excellent paperwork because he was getting on in his years, and he knew his health was starting to fail. So he had his estate planning done, and I can tell you it's a huge load off of the family's mind. There's 4 siblings in my family. My mom passed away years ago, so it was just Dad. And it's really nice having the paperwork in place and there being no doubt about how things proceed. I would do it. And now I don't know how Jonathan feels. You can talk to Jonathan about your particular estate. But after going through this process with my dad and seeing other families go through it, my will is going to be very simple. You ready for this, Malcolm? It's going to be about a page long, and it's going to say, if my wife is still alive, everything goes to my wife. If my wife has predeceased me, everything goes to my kids, split up in thirds, because there are 3 of them. Now, my dad did that thing of he listed in his will particular items that meant particular things to family members. So he parsed some of it out specifically. I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to say, you guys figure it out. Here's the process. You know, you can draft for my stuff, okay? You know? So you guys can roll dice, and then, you know, you get picks from then on. And who knows what I'll own at that point in time. And I'm sure Malcolm will want the truck if I own a truck at that point in time. So anyway, I hit Jonathan up, and I have not done my estate planning, and I seriously am gonna do it with him. And so I recommend that you take advantage of that. And one last note, we're not very high tech today because our giant television that sits here and looms over the screen and threatens to fall over someday, we haven't been able to get the thing to turn on today. So that's why, if you're watching on video, that's why this screen in the back is just this big black looming thing.
That's why we call it the high-tech studios.
Yes.
It's right. We can't even get a TV to turn on. So, you know, this is great stuff here. So we'll try to get that taken care of. So all of that said, Nick, I will throw it back to you. And again, my advice to you is it's just dudes sitting around talking. So let's have fun and let's go.
All right. I guess, is everyone keeping their sanity through this quarantine time? I guess no sports besides The Last Dance every 2 episodes.
Oh, it's totally easy for me. I grew up out on a farm as an only child, so far away from civilization that they didn't offer high-speed internet or cable. So I grew up socially isolating.
Okay.
So did you not have, like, for television, you had like 3 channels and that was it?
We well, before we got a satellite dish, one of those big, huge
you got one of the big,
dishes.
huge, right?
Yeah. That you had to use the remote control to have it move and point at different satellites and everything like that. Yeah.
You could hear it out in the yard going bzzz.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And in most of there were probably like 15 different satellites that we go to, but most of the main channels were on like three different ones.
Right. So for me,
G5 I think was the one with
G5
most of
channels.
satellite G5 was the one with most of the main channels.
And Chris has continued to work out at any time with Mitch Ludwig, right? Yeah. Mitchell used to be the punter for Tech.
Now to clarify, I do not go inside the gym.
Exactly.
It's closed.
Right.
These are outdoor workouts.
Right. Yeah. So because they can do it in the parking lot and all that. So for me, there's 4 siblings in my family, and my sister and one of my brothers. So we got together via text at the beginning of the year, and we're like, okay, we're all fat and we need to lose weight. I was up to 186, which is like the fattest I've ever been. And so we agreed to, check in with each other and start losing weight and stuff. And I'm down to 173. I'm pretty sure the last 2 or 3 pounds that have come off have been muscle and not fat because I haven't been able to go to the gym. So I tried to buy dumbbells.
No, they're all.
You cannot find. There's 2 things I know you cannot find. You cannot find webcams. Can't get them because everybody's buying them, to Zoom and stuff like that. And you can't find dumbbells. I went to Dick's, Walmart. I even looked online at Target, and they're like, nope, we're all sold out of dumbbells.
There's where they're building that new hotel over behind Kroger and all that. There's this construction site, of course.
Right.
And there's all these old cinder blocks sitting up there. So I was doing squats with cinder blocks and like front squats with cinder blocks in my hands. You can do pull-ups from tree branches. Things. So there's plenty of stuff you can do. Lots and lots of push-ups and things like that.
Oh, I sat and thought about it. And if I just had 2 25-pound dumbbells, I could do all kinds of stuff. Legs and shoulders and chest and all that stuff. So anyway, that's how it's affecting me. Yeah.
There you go. And then anything new from Tech Sideline coming this week, and even without sports?
Well, I will reassume my 1995 series. I skipped it this past week because I didn't want to watch the Navy game because it was such a 14-0, and Virginia Tech didn't score the second touchdown until 1:55 seconds left in the game.
There were fewer than 500 yards of combined offense.
That's like Wake Forest numbers right there.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if you go back and watch the Wake Forest game, like
at least there's some stuff going on.
It's exciting at the end with missed field goals.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, watching the Wake Forest game live would not be as boring as going back and watching the Navy game because I know what happens in the Navy game.
Yeah.
It'd just be 2.5 to 3 hours of me watching it just to say I watched it. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you watch the Wake Forest game, it was live. You didn't know what was going to happen next. Mm-hmm. Watching that Navy game is what's about to happen. Like, I've already looked at the box score. Yeah. I know when Tech scores or when they don't score, which is on pretty much
most
every drive.
Of the game.
Yeah, I know the defensive stats, so I'm not looking forward to it, but I guess I'll get that done tomorrow.
So I actually went to that game with a bunch of my buddies, and I remember, that was a long time ago, and I don't remember a lot of things very well. I remember Navy's defensive line was some quick, small guys, and they gave Tech fits.
Well, Tech couldn't throw the ball. Is another thing. The thing I'm seeing is Druckenmiller was so bad early in the season, with the exception of the BC game. The teams are just stacking the box, and Tech can't throw the football at that point in 1995. I'm guessing the offense was better in the second half of the season. I'm guessing it got better as Druckenmiller improved.
I'm not really sure. I think he really hit his stride in 1996. So this brings up this discussion of how people remember players. And when I think of Druckenmiller, I remember winning a lot of football games when he was the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the best performances I've ever seen by a quarterback was him in the 96 Orange Bowl.
Sure.
That was a huge game against a Nebraska team that really should have been playing for the national championship. Mm-hmm. And Druckenmiller wasn't nervous at all. Oh, he played great.
I mean, Tech could have scored 40 or 50 points if the receivers could catch. Would they have 10 drops?
They had a lot of drops. I remember they were dropping touchdowns early. And so one of the things that's interesting about your 1995 series is you realize the offense was pretty darn bad.
It was bad the first half of 1995. I mean, there's no way around it. Druckenmiller, he would make some throws. You were like, wow, that guy's really talented. But on the whole, he was just not a good quarterback. I think his stats for this Navy game were like 10 of 18 for 98 yards and 2 picks.
Yeah.
Just not good. And he was bad for about 80% of the Pitt game. Even later in the season, I'll get to this in a later article, of course, but he threw 3 picks in the UVA game.
Well, that's part of the reason they were down 29-28.
Right.
It's 29-14.
28-14.
28-14, yeah. So, and something that we'll talk about later is they replayed the 2014 Ohio State game on the ACC network yesterday, and Nick and I were watching it and texting about it. And I was watching people talk about Michael Brewer on the message boards. And don't get me wrong, we all love Michael Brewer. Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, oh, man, he was tough gamer. What a great quarterback. And I'm sitting there thinking, you remember that's the same guy that threw that interception against Georgia Tech that basically lost the game, right? Yeah. So it's funny how you forget that stuff. Mm-hmm. And, I don't, Michael's a great Hokie, and I did enjoy watching him play quarterback. But there's a phrase for that I can't think of. But how you look back at guys that you love and you forget the bad parts.
Well, everybody always thinks when they think 1995, and I think they're actually remembering 1996. People talk about 1995 as having some great offensive line and a great running game and things like that. And like I said, a lot of this was Druckenmiller, but on the whole, no, the 95 offensive line was nowhere near as good as the 96 offensive line. In fact, through the first 5-6 games of the season, they only averaged over 4 yards per carry once.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know why people...
And that was with 50 carries for 300 yards
that was Miami. They dominated Miami, but got shut down by Navy. But the thing is, that's how Miami played, man. They would athlete on athlete.
Yeah.
They were going to trust their athletes to beat your athletes. Those other teams, they were just stacking the box. Saying, beat me, Druckenmiller, and he could not do it.
Right.
Well.
All right, so now that we're actually going to move into some more recent news, obviously we're not anywhere close to what LSU did in the draft with 14 picks. That's absolutely insane.
From one
but
team.
Rambo, Dalton Keene, is headed up north to be coached by one of the arguably greatest coaches of all time, Bill Belichick. Obviously, Patriots don't have Tom Brady anymore. Their quarterback discussion's still up for grabs. But how can Belichick use Keene to the max? And what do you expect for his career? And do you think it'll last?
Yeah, I mean, it'll last at least a few years because, those third-round picks, that's good money. You cut a guy drafted in the third round, you cost yourself a lot of money.
Was it 4 years, $4 million? Is that what I saw?
It's 4 years. NFL rookie contracts. Mm-hmm. It's not like it used to be in the day when rookies would hire an agent and each contract
everything
was
got negotiated.
Like, where you're picked,
is what you get
that's
paid.
What, yeah, exactly. It's already set. So, I mean, you really don't. I don't even know if you have to hire an agent these days, unless you just unless you did it for endorsements and things like that. Yeah. Otherwise, they're just taking money out of your salary and that they don't really have any control over anyway. So, but at any rate, yeah, I mean, I think he's going to have some competition. Didn't they draft another? They drafted two tight ends
right before him.
You're right, 2 tight ends in the 3rd round.
Who did they draft right before him?
I forget, but it was a bigger tight end. Yeah.
Yes,
but do they run a two? Well, so who knows what they're going to run now? But don't they run a 2 tight end system basically?
Defined tight end.
Yeah.
H-back, whatever.
Right.
Well, that's a great thing about Dalton Keene is he can do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, I would expect him to. If they drafted a big blocker before him, then I would expect those guys to have 2 different roles.
So the one thing I want to say about Dalton Keene getting drafted is I've kept my mouth shut about the fact that he declared early and left Tech a year early. I'm so glad he got drafted, and I'm so glad he got drafted fairly high because it saves me personally the difficulty of having to be upset with him. Mm-hmm. Because if you had taken – I was thinking about this last night, and here's what I came up with. Dalton Keene deciding to leave early hit me as hard as if Sam Rogers had decided to leave early. Now, Dalton's almost beloved as Sam. Nobody's as beloved as Sam. But I felt that, with all the transfers and all the stuff that's going on, is that Dalton was one guy who was really committed to the program and really was a guy who, especially as a senior this next coming year, would have been one of the faces of the program. So I don't want to get dramatic about it, but I was disappointed and a little hurt when the guy declared early. Mm-hmm. So I'm really glad that he got drafted high, and his decision in retrospect makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's all been resolved, and this is all just me. I'm not talking for Hokie Nation or anything like that. It saves me it saves me from having to think about him the way I think about Gerard Evans.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, come on, dude, man, you should have come back another year. That just wasn't smart. Mm-hmm. Great. Thankfully, we don't have to think that way about Dalton Keene.
But there's going to be some other guys wishing they made that decision.
Yeah.
Considering the situation we're in right now. I mean,
you mean they made the decision to go early? They're going to wish that they'd done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not talking about at Virginia Tech necessarily, but in general. I mean, they're not going to play football this fall. They might as well get paid to not play football, right? So it's just very, very, very strange. I bet there's guys, all those guys that decided to stay at Clemson.
Yeah,
Etienne,
right?
Travis Etienne, yeah,
right. Because think about it, if the NFL draft is next spring, let's say college football is also next spring, and the NFL draft is right in the middle of college football season, what are you going to have? Get 3/4 of the way through the season, a guy gets drafted, and then he's like, oh, I just got drafted. I'm not playing the rest of the season, coach. Mm-hmm. Right?
Or, gosh, so a thought I've had is that let's say they do decide to play football in the spring instead of some abbreviated season in the fall or whatever. We've joked about how much work that's going to be trying to fit in basketball and football, and you mentioned the draft being thrown in there. My guess is they delay the draft.
I would think they would.
Yeah,
you would think.
But the point I wanted to make is that is going to be fascinating if they move football to college football. I'm not talking about pro football. If they move college football to the spring and they cram all that stuff together, it's going to be exhausting, but it'll be something you've never seen before. It'll be really fascinating to see all the effects that it has on the entire football world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that'd be, I mean, obviously that's a big what if or what could happen down the road. Obviously, we have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, but I would like it in the spring. I think it'd be kind of cool.
I think it'd be cool.
You have basketball throughout the week, and then on the weekend, you got game day on Saturday.
Man, and I wouldn't want to be a TV exec trying to figure all this out, but for me, the thought of a conference game only season that is 8 weeks, and some conferences play nine conference games, so maybe the NCAA or somebody, again, who knows who's in charge here, maybe they'll decide to play 9 games, conference games only, And in the case of the ACC, you could fold Notre Dame into that. You could take your regular 8 games and everybody could play Notre Dame. I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff.
What about Army and Navy?
Yeah.
And BYU.
So if you go 9 games in the conferences that only have 8 conference games, which is most of them, is it the Pac-12 that has 9?
I think it is Big 12 has
Big
9.
12, yeah. So maybe 1 or 2 of them have 9 games. That gives the independents, the Power 5 independents, an opportunity to fit in there in some way and fill some of those slots. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. It could be really interesting.
It's not going to be. I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be very, very strange. Like I don't know that. Are those independents that they're going to like play each other twice? Is Navy and Notre Dame going to do a home and home in 1 year? I mean, will that be the only way they can fit?
So as a total sidebar to that, if anybody was watching the ACC network last night and they were watching the 2007 ACC championship game between Virginia Tech and Boston College when Matt Ryan was playing for BC, they mentioned at one point during that broadcast that Virginia Tech, it was the first time they'd ever played the same team twice in one season, except for, I don't remember the year, they played William and Mary twice in one season. And I was working and didn't quite catch what the announcer said, but it was something like, and they played them really close together, maybe even back to back. So, that was probably way back in the 30s or something like
sure
that.
It was, yeah.
And he said, oh, by the way, Virginia Tech won both of them over William and Mary.
You have like a 3-game series for the Army Navy. I mean, that'd be pretty cool. You have kind of like a playoff basketball format for the independents.
Where do they usually play that game?
Philadelphia.
So they could move it around.
Yeah. So they could play 1 at Philadelphia, 1 at Navy, 1 at Army. Talk about something cool.
I'm telling you, man, there's some neat stuff that's going to come out of this disaster, if they do move football to this.
I want Virginia Tech to play Army, like in September. If you look at their stadium, it's right on the banks of the Hudson River. It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I would love to take
there's
that
some
trip.
very cool stadiums I'd like to go to. I don't see Tech ever going to Washington Stadium, the Huskies, but I'd love to do that one.
It's really old, isn't it? It's really old.
Well, it's right off the water, right?
Yeah, it's right on the lake. Yeah.
And then also, if we're going back to the NFL kind of part, Reggie Floyd got picked up as an undrafted free agent. You think there's anything there it could happen?
I don't think Reggie I don't think he quite has the lateral quickness to be an NFL player.
Yeah.
And it limited him from being anything more than a solid college player. I think.
Yeah.
So I just don't think he'd be able to match up in coverage.
But at least he's going to get his shot, and you never know. I mean, when Cam Chancellor came out, I thought Cam had weaknesses. I never knew. Sometimes he was playing out of position at Tech, and
his best year at Tech was his sophomore season. That's the only year he played Rover.
Was he Rover? Yeah.
And then he moved to free safety, and he wasn't as good at free safety.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe they'll find a place to put Reggie. Were there any other signings?
Bryce Perkins went to the Rams. That's no Tech, but I know Perkins went to the Rams, so I thought that was pretty interesting.
Did Perkins get drafted, or was
he was picked up and undrafted.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
UVA only had Bryce Hall and Joe Reed picked up, and I think they were within like 3 picks of each other.
Yeah. Joe Reed's a good player, man. That's a guy somebody could hopefully do something with.
Yep.
Can't speak for Bryce Hall. Dalton Keene one-upped him the one time he had a shot at it.
No, it was Trey Turner and Dalton Keene in that game.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
We destroy their defensive
Thank you for the
sometimes.
highlight film.
Yeah.
All right, and so now moving away from the NFL, maybe the biggest blockbuster, obviously, for Tech football, besides the Dalton Keene news, is getting Justus Reed, the 6'3", 270-pound defensive end from Youngstown State. And you're like, what the heck? He's from Youngstown State. Doesn't sound that great. But watching his film, that dude can lay the hammer.
Yeah, he's a big guy. Pretty good quickness, I think. He's tough. Obviously, anybody who would stick to college football for 7 years is tough.
Really wants to play.
Really wants to play. Is a tough-minded individual. He was coached by Bo Pelini. I'll take that. I'm a big Bo Pelini fan as far as like.
Is that where Bo is now?
He left
after this past
2
season.
years. After 2 years.
But he was at Youngstown State.
Yeah.
Now he's a head coach or defensive coordinator.
Oh, he was the head coach.
Wow, cool.
I'm pretty sure Reed played under him. Yeah.
Reed left because Pelini left. He was going to stay for one more year if Pelini was there, and then
really
Pelini dipped out, so he transferred.
So he grew up in Florida, 3-star recruit. I don't remember where he was ranked nationally. Once you get down to the 3 stars, it kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's a difference between...
I would argue that once you get down to halfway through the 4 stars, it doesn't matter.
See, there's a big difference between a high 4-star and a low 4-star.
Yeah.
3 stars?
High 4 stars, David Wilson and Ryan Williams.
Yeah, and like the number 35 player in the country.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing. So he grew up in Florida. He signed with the Gators and was with them for a couple years. You know, I don't have his injury. Nick, do you have his injury history and stuff like that?
Yeah, so he was at Florida for he was class of 2014. That's how old this kid is. He redshirted his freshman year. He battled just off and on injuries sophomore year, and he ended up with like 9 total tackles and a sack. He transferred to Youngstown State in 2016 after Florida was like, you're not going to get that big of a time. And then 2017, he had just 5 sacks, 5.5 tackles, but he only played 7 games.
Right.
So he didn't play that much because of injuries. Then he missed all of 2018 with a torn Achilles, so he can kind of share that with like Jeremy Webb. And then his first fully healthy season, 2019, he finished 43 tackles, 19 for a loss, and 12.5 sacks.
12.5 sacks.
It's him and, oh my gosh, why can't I think of his name? Virginia Tech offensive line.
Tyrell Smith.
So
one of them is the old man on the team. We're not
sure.
No,
they both are.
Well, they were both
24.
but one of them has a birthday before the other.
Yeah.
But they're both the class of 2014.
Right, yeah, and Tyrell Smith, he went to prep school originally.
Yeah.
And then came to Virginia Tech, redshirted, then played, got hurt this past season. So he's getting a 6th year. So that's 6 years plus that prep school year. So think about that. If there's no football this fall, let's say it gets played next spring. Then these guys were class of 2014.
He'll be 25.
Still going to be playing college football in 2021.
In 2021, 7 years later after they graduated from high school. There's probably Hunter Carpenter's the only guy that played that much college football, right?
Right.
And these guys are 3 years older than Tremaine Edmonds. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Tremaine will be starting his 3rd year in the NFL this year.
All right, so I watched Reed's film. I didn't watch it with an eye towards analyzing how he played. I do remember when he closes and he hits hard.
Well, he's a big guy. He's a big guy for sure. 6'3", 270.
He had 4 forced fumbles.
Yeah, he hits hard. And I think he's got, once he pursues, I think he's got good speed. I'm not sure how he is off the ball. That part of his film I don't remember. He's probably, as many years as he's been playing college football, he's probably got a lot of hand fighting techniques down.
He's really good with his hands.
I don't know that he's particularly explosive off the ball. Did you?
I don't know about that. It's hard to tell because we don't watch much FCS football.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to compare him to the offensive tackle he's going up against. So it's a really tough comparison. I know this. I don't think Virginia Tech has a defensive end on their roster right now that would have had 12.5 sacks at the FCS level last year.
Right. So if that 12.5 sacks equates to 6 sacks at the Power 5 level, we'll take it.
We'll take that in a heartbeat. I'm going to read your notes right here. He's a mature kid. Admits that when he was younger, when he was being recruited out of high school, it was all about the flashy and cool stuff a university could offer. But once he entered the transfer portal, he was looking for a school with a good winning mentality where he would feel the most comfortable, and that's why he chose Virginia Tech. So that's the difference between a 24-year-old and a 17-year-old as far as college football recruits go.
Yeah.
Once you get he's been in 2 different programs. He's learned what really matters.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's it's almost got a what's that?
He doesn't need lazy rivers, right?
What's that JUCO show on Netflix? I forgot the name of it.
The quarterback one.
No, the
I know the one you're talking about.
Oh man,
Last Chance U.
Last Chance U. Yeah, he's kind of got that mentality of he's been around enough that he knows what's important.
Some of those JUCOs, man. This is a different topic, but like their facilities aren't necessarily good. Like they're big high schools with better facilities in some junior colleges.
Particularly in Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm excited and reading about him. He seems like a good overall guy. He seems pretty humble. He just wants the chance to be good. I know he would have probably still got drafted if he stayed one more year at Youngstown State, but obviously coming to Tech, getting in Power 5, getting more publicity, he'll obviously get better looks. But I'm I'm excited about him and watching his film. It's 20 minutes long.
so let's repeat 6'3", 270 at the very least. He should be able to hold the edge.
Yeah, he's got the numbers.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Virginia Tech, they've wanted to get a little bit bigger on the defensive line. He'll provide that. You know, and we don't know. Like, people ask, you think he'll play left or right? I don't know that Tech will run left or right defensive end. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't know. They could go back to the old stud and end situation where,
in which case he'd definitely be an end.
Right. He would probably be the short side defensive end on the boundary. So, but I don't know. We were maybe going to find that out this past spring or this spring, but we could not.
We shall see.
We'll see.
I will say he does bring a pretty impressive beard to the team.
Yeah,
he's got a good-looking beard for him.
Everybody else at Tech's recruited can't even grow a beard yet.
He's a grown man. Reminds me of Greg Oden when he played for Ohio State. Looked like he was 40 years old. He was like 18 or 19 years old.
All right, so again with the transfers, we're going to go down to basketball. Cordell Pemsl transferred from Iowa to the Hokies. He's 6'8", 6'9", and depends on what website you read. He's 248, so not small. I mean, he's a pretty big boy. There's not much you could find on him online. His highlight film was only like a minute long for the past season.
Basketball highlight film is generally not
a layup. I mean, he's pretty good. Played 96 total games at Iowa, averaged 5.9 points, 58% field goal, 4.3 rebounds, 1.3 assists. His Iowa coach said that he's got great explosiveness that he hadn't seen in a long time, and he just wanted him to succeed. And so he was kind of like, "Yeah, I'm all for you transferring. I just want you to have a good senior year."
Great explosiveness. That's interesting. 6'8", 248.
But basically, what that means is, he had those knee injuries early in his career, and so that limited his athleticism. And he this past probably early to mid-February, kind of seemed like he was getting some of his athleticism back, and that's when his coach made those comments.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So there's context.
Yeah, that's the context. He's saying, man, he hasn't been this explosive in a while. I think he's finally getting over those injuries.
And I like the we'd all like to see 6'10", 6'11". 6'8", 6'9" is good. The 248's really good. Yeah. That's something that's, Tech has signed, and yes, it's signed, not just got commitments from them. They've signed a couple of
I'm having this last week.
And Guesson, the N is silent. So David Guesson, is he 6'8"?
He's 6'9", 195.
195. That's really different from 6'9", 240. Gison? Okay. So I like the weight in addition to the height is what I'm driving at.
Again, that's also being 4 or 5 years in a Power 5 program.
A grown
also
man.
Having that. Yeah, so another grown man we're adding.
Well, Mike Young actually said on his online chat with John Laser last week, that you can't expect Virginia Tech to enter the transfer portal very often, because it's like I've been talking about.
So he actually said it, huh?
He said it. He said, he didn't say this part, but I say this part. They run a system offense. It takes years to learn that system. A 1-year grad transfer isn't going to help you very much. As far as Pemsl goes, I think it shows that they wanted to add somebody else to the roster, but it's not like you can go out and find anybody this spring. There's no AAU events. You can't leave campus to recruit anyway.
Right.
So there wasn't the option really of adding of finding someone new,
a guy you weren't already on.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is a special case. Like, I don't know if this was going to happen if the coronavirus didn't happen. I mean, it's just speculation on my part. But he'll fill a role. I don't know if I see him as a starter, but he should be capable of helping to a certain extent. If he plays, probably will play the 4. The 4-man for Mike Young a lot of times in the past has been kind of a screening type. Mm-hmm. So that seems like a good role for him.
Okay. Yeah, and Nick, your notes say he plays with a lot of emotion and has great hustle that resembles Zach Leday.
That's when I was reading that. I mean,
now where'd you get that from?
Kind of say I that's what I was when I was seeing him. I was like, okay, this kid's kind of like Zach. Obviously, Zach Leday much more prolific and more well-rounded. But he has the emotion and like he gets a big shot, layup or something, he waves his arms around like Lede. Obviously, had his crazy antics, but he plays with a lot of emotion and heart, and he hustles really hard.
And guys like that, regardless of how much they actually play and how much they actually contribute, bring something to the team. And I go back to the Shane Henry example.
Sure.
Shane didn't play a whole lot, but I think he really enjoyed his time here at Virginia Tech, and hopefully Pemsl will feel the same way. He's got 1 year left, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. If he can just add to the chemistry, in addition to what he's able to do on the court.
He battled a ton of injuries also, mostly in high school though. So he had he had a knee surgery in college, but I think that's his second or third surgery.
Look at let's see, knee surgery in December of 2018.
Yep.
Before that, he tore his meniscus his junior year of high school, and then underwent knee osteotomy, which is the cutting of either the tibia or femur in order to relieve pressure from his knee. That doesn't sound pleasant.
I wouldn't enjoy that.
No.
I don't know if that's growing pains or that was part of the meniscus, but what
does that cutting mean? Were they actually shaving?
They actually cut out a piece of bone. I actually looked that up. They have to cut out a piece of the bone to relieve pressure on the knee. So
sounds like pressure on the knee, not shin. Okay, I won't go there. I won't say it sounds like really bad shin splints.
I think it's worse than that.
That'll light up Facebook and create emails if I say something dumb like that.
So he's. I don't know. He doesn't average a ton, but
he'll help.
More height, and it'll help. Obviously, again, more maturity and more experience than bringing in another freshman. So that'll be nice to have a kid who's playing at the level, the
Power 5 level,
in the Big Ten, which is not something to joke about. Then after this past week was pretty dull with sport news, except until Friday night. They rebroadcasted on Facebook the 6 overtime football win versus North Carolina with commentary from John Laser and Fuente. It really just hit on the big plays. I was expecting a whole breakdown of the whole game. Then I realized how long that actually would have been.
Right.
It would have been forever. So, it was pretty good. But did you find anything interesting listening to Fuente and Laser?
So it was it wound up being an hour long, and you can still access it on Hokie Sports Facebook. So go to Facebook.com/Hokie Sports and click the videos tab, and it's still in there, and it's about an hour long. And you're right. Without really thinking it through, I kind of naively expected it to be longer. And for me, I thought there would be more consistent commentary throughout.
Yeah.
There was one long stretch where they were just showing highlights and neither guy was talking. And they glossed over pretty much the first half. Boom, boom, boom. Let's move on.
The last 30 minutes were the overtimes.
Yeah. So then they did some of the second half stuff and the overtimes. And I'm trying to remember, and Nick, having watched it, you might remember things I don't recall. I thought that Fuente was not particularly forthcoming about the decision to change to Quincy Patterson. If I remember the game correctly, as a fan watching
they showed the play.
Ryan Willis ate a ball he really shouldn't have eaten, or threw a pass he shouldn't have thrown.
No, he should have eaten it.
Yeah,
and he did.
There were two plays to start the third quarter. One, he took a sack that was entirely unnecessary. He could have just thrown the ball away.
Right.
And then later on, they showed the video, but they didn't really talk about it.
Right.
So they implied that's why he got benched by showing the video of it, but they didn't actually put any comments.
Fuente didn't actually say anything about it.
Right. So he scrambled to the right in front of Tech's bench. So right in front of Fuente. So Fuente's got a clear view of it, and he starts to get sacked, and he just flips the ball over his head towards the sideline, and
Fuente snapped.
I think gosh, that headset that he was using.
It's amazing it still works, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine. Now, he said, I told Brad Cornelison, he said, I told Brad, you got to come up with something. I know you don't work. I mean, this is a third quarterback. We don't rep him that much during the week as far as the actual game plan, but you got to come up with something on the fly here because
Willis is out.
Willis is out. Oh man!
And then I thought Fuente said something like, "We do a pretty good job of even getting our third guy some reps."
I think Fuente, he's probably been at some other places when he was offensive coordinator, and seen how few reps third string quarterbacks get. And he's probably thought, man, I might need a third string quarterback one day. So whenever I'm a head coach, I've got to find a way to get that guy a few more reps. You still can't rep him very much at all because it takes away from the reps from first and second string quarterbacks, and you can only practice so many hours a week. But it was a good thing they did get him those whatever reps they got him in practice.
And so another thing I remember about the quarterback change is that we've all seen the play where Hendon bent his left leg at a really bizarre angle, and the screen cap of it is horrendous. But Fuente reiterated, and I'd forgotten about this, that he actually hurt himself earlier.
See, I thought it was the play before. They showed the weird angle on the TV, and then he stayed in the game for one more play, and then he came out. So I thought, I didn't know that it occurred earlier in the game.
I think he was saying that it occurred earlier than that nasty.
Right? Yes, it was the previous possession, and he tried to play through it. Yeah. I'd also forgotten Fuente said Hooker was nervous to start the game. Like he even asked him after the game, "Hey, were you nervous out there?" And he was, for whatever reason. I guess it's one thing that was his third career start. All right, it's one thing to beat Rhode Island in Lane Stadium, and his first career start was against Miami
on the road,
half-filled stadium. But then Hooker is from Greensboro. He knew half those players for UNC. I mean, that's more of a rivalry for a lot of Tech's players than UVA. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, more Tech players know more UNC players than they do UVA players.
This is very true.
Right.
And that was the game where Mac Brown brought his team out before Enter Sandman because he wanted them to see it, right?
Yeah.
And what's written between the lines is you'll never see anything like this in Keenan, and an atmosphere like this, and he wanted his players to see it.
Fuente talked about that.
Yeah.
Fuente does not like North Carolina.
No.
That was before Mac Brown.
Yeah.
I don't think he has anything against Mac. But yeah, he hates those guys.
Yeah, whatever went on there, that was forged back when Larry Fedora was head coach. Yeah. So the other thing I remember that I thought was really interesting was that the very final sixth, and I don't know if we want to jump all the way to the winning score, but Fuente did say that he said when they put in the rule where after 3 overtimes you have to just start going for 2-point conversions. Yeah. He said, I remember thinking, who's going to need that? I mean, how often do you go past 3 overtimes? I mean,
that game gets played once a decade,
yeah,
right?
Something like that, right? And but he said that the play that Cornelsen called in the 6th overtime where Quincy just ran off the left side and scored the winning conversion, Fuente had to basically eat his headset. You could tell he didn't want to call that play, but he kept quiet, and he said, "I'm really glad I kept my mouth shut."
He said that was the best decision I made all game was letting Brad call whatever he wanted to call. So remember all the arguments on the message board after the rough start to this past season about how Fuente should take over play calling or take more control of the offense. Maybe he already had control. I mean, that's a situation where he basically said, I'd been telling Cornelsen to a certain extent.
Or he can overrule.
Or I can overrule. Yeah. I mean, maybe he does some of that.
Yeah.
It's so hard to tell.
A thought I had listening to all that was that, people, I felt like when you listen to Fuente talk about that game, you can see why he respects and supports Brad Cornelsen, because he basically threw Quincy Patterson in Cornelsen's lap and said, "This is your problem. You fix it.
You have to come up with something on the fly in the middle of the game."
And he did.
Yeah.
And then Cornelsen made the game-winning play, and Fuente, so I think you can see in those two instances that Fuente does support Cornelsen, that he's not checking his watch wondering when the next guy's going to come along.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's what I found interesting, that Cornelson kind of won the game for us. And I always like Cornelson a little bit, so hearing that was good. And I guess, like you said, Fuente does have kind of the over-controlling power, kind of like a presidential veto.
Well, I mean, he's certainly the best offensive coordinator Tech has had this century.
Yes.
Think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought Loeffler was I don't think there was anything wrong with Loeffler. I think he got put into a pretty tough situation there at the end of Beamer's tenure. But Cornelson by far.
If Tech could have just played Ohio State every game when Loeffler was offensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's the game he got up for every year.
Which segues into. Actually, before we get into the Ohio State game, let's take a break and do the sponsor promo for the Fisher Law Firm, and I will take a break also. So once again, we appreciate Jonathan Fisher sponsoring the Tech Sideline podcast. And remember, Jonathan's got a deal going where if you do your estate planning with him, you will get a free TSL Pass subscription. I'll be upfront about that. The length of the subscription depends upon which services you utilize from Jonathan. So it could be anywhere from, 6 months to a year. He's got that figured out. So let's see, where is his info? Let me look it up. He is info@fisherlegal.com or 1-800-680-7031. Jonathan Fisher, Virginia Tech class of 1998. Okay, so Nick, Ohio State game.
Yeah, so, I mean, I remember we traveled up to one of my dad's best friends from college, up to his, I guess we went down to North Carolina to watch it there. And I was in 7th grade, so it's still kind of blurry vision, but I do remember how awesome it was. And I remembered, thinking in the game, dang, we're in control of this game. Yeah. And then I watched it yesterday, and we really had control of that game. So I guess there are any other thoughts that were reaffirmed? And then also, what emotions were you feeling near the end when you're watching it live?
So I actually went to it. I got a buddy, Richie Davis in Radford, and Richie's pretty good about making sure I go on the road to places I should go. And I've missed things in the past. Like I did go to LSU in 2007, but I didn't go to Texas A&M in 2002, and I really should have done that. So Richie and I went up to see that, and it was just the atmosphere is everything they say it was. You know, and something I'd forgotten about, that was at the time that was the largest crowd in stadium history. And what I recall, not what I recall, but what I thought watching it was, you're right, Virginia Tech took charge of that game early. They made a few mistakes as far as penalties, and I think Michael Brewer even threw an interception.
Threw a pick early
on the first possession.
You know, what Tech did was Tech was 7 of 10 on 3rd down in the first half, and that included a 3rd and 17.
To Isaiah Ford.
Yeah.
From deep in their own territory.
Yeah, he threw from their end zone.
Yes.
Right. And they went down the field and scored on that drive.
Yeah.
Didn't they?
No, we punted after
We ended up punting, but it's field position.
Yeah.
It helped
but a really critical possession was Tech got the ball with about a minute left to go, a minute and a half left to go in the first half, and holding a 14-7 lead. And that was a really nice drive downfield, and that was a pass out to the flat to Sam Rogers. And he turned it up, and a Ohio State defensive player met him, and Sam just shrugged him off, and that put him up 21-7 at halftime. But the thing that struck me watching the rebroadcast was how much future NFL talent was on the field.
Ohio State team.
Well, not just for Ohio State, for Virginia Tech. So I think, Chris, didn't I hit you up and say
you did, and I have those names.
So listen to this list.
All right, on offense, these players were either drafted in the NFL by the NFL or end up playing a regular season game as undrafted free agents. Right. Now, not all the drafted players actually played. All right, Wyatt Teller.
Yep.
Obviously, starter in the NFL. Sam Rogers drafted, but never actually played in an NFL
Sam
game.
Was drafted.
But Bucky Hodges drafted, never actually played in a game. Isaiah Ford drafted late, plays for the Dolphins. Cam Phillips, undrafted, but has played in NFL games and caught passes.
And was tearing up the XFL.
He's the greatest wide receiver in XFL
in the history.
Yeah, he absolutely is. Ryan Malik played in 2 regular season games for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Was he drafted?
No.
Really? I thought Malik was drafted.
Or if he was, it was late. But he played in 2 games, caught a pass for the Steelers.
And he was a real weapon against Ohio State. He was
a lot.
Yeah.
Trey Edmonds.
I remember seeing Edmonds on the sideline.
He threw a key block. Remember, he was getting over that broken leg that he had at the end of 2013.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he should have been playing at this point, obviously, but he threw a key block.
Deion
Newsome
jet sweep, right?
Yeah. And Lawrence Gibson was drafted.
Wow.
Yeah.
And all those guys were on Tech's team.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, that's just the offense.
Right. That's just the offense. And by the way, the top 2 running backs were Shai McKenzie and Marshawn Williams.
Yes.
Guys whose careers didn't end well.
Well, yeah, injuries. Defensively, Keyshawn Jarrett playing a lot for the Redskins before he had that neck injury that ended his career. Kendall Fuller.
Yep.
Who just signed a big contract with the Redskins.
He was a true freshman?
Yeah, he's a sophomore.
No, he was a sophomore.
Was he really? Okay.
Yeah. Remember, he only basically played 2 years at Tech because of that knee injury his third year. And then he declared for the draft.
Yep.
Chuck Clark.
Yep.
He just signed a great deal with the Ravens.
He did sign a great deal with the Ravens. Daddy Nicholas.
Yep.
Brandon Faison was not drafted.
But is still in the NFL.
But is still in the NFL.
Wow.
So those are the five guys from defense. And also Kenny Canham played in that game. And he was as good a college player as you could probably be without being an NFL.
And Luther Mattey's on that list too.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and then Corey Marshall was playing in that game.
That's correct, yeah.
And there was a ton of talent on the field for Virginia Tech. Yeah. And some of the comments on the message board that drew criticism, but I agree with them, were how in the world did that team have such a bad season?
That's the same Wake Forest season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, by the end of the season, the film gets out on your strengths and weaknesses. And, like, Wake Forest's great strength was their defensive backs, right? How physical they were. And, as good as Isaiah Ford and Cam Phillips were, and Bucky Hodges, they were freshmen. Mm-hmm. Virginia Tech started 3 freshman receivers that year, 2 of them true freshmen, and they were small, and at this point they were weak. Yeah. And Wake got up in their faces and
challenged them
and physically beat them up. And that was a poor matchup.
Do you remember that Brewer laid a bomb right in on Isaiah Ford, like inside the Ohio State 10-yard line?
He dropped it.
And it was tight coverage.
Oh, yeah.
But Isaiah Ford 2 years later would have made it.
Would have caught it, yeah. So I'm trying to think. It was the very next week that Tech lost to East Carolina at home. And they were down 21-0.
21-0 into the first quarter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And to be fair, Ohio State didn't make many plays. I thought J.T. Barrett ran the ball fairly well. He didn't throw it well.
That was the worst game of his career, easily.
Yeah, their offensive line was young, and that was the Bud Foster Bear defense game where he had a great game plan. And so my question for you is, I don't think that's the greatest win in the history of Virginia Tech football because, certainly the 95 Sugar Bowl and other wins resonate more, even though that was fantastic.
It might have been the most surprising.
Is it the most impressive win? I mean, that team went on to win the national championship.
Right. I would say it's the most impressive. Yes, that beating Ohio State, you don't beat Ohio State these days. Mm-hmm. What do they lose 1 game a year, maybe? And it takes Alabama or Clemson or somebody like that to beat Ohio State.
And for the record, Ohio State was ranked 8th in the country.
Right.
And then they lost that and still made their way to
And by the end of the year, they were smoking people, man.
I came away thinking that was a great coaching job by Urban Meyer that year.
Right.
Because I remember the Ohio State fans after the game were like, man, what's up with that offensive line?
Right.
Well, that offensive line is going to help you win a national championship.
Yeah.
3 months later.
Crazy to think about, isn't it? I would agree it's most impressive. It's not the biggest or the best because, it was in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
They didn't. It ended up saving the bowl streak. Tech won 6-6 that year. If the bowl streak would have ended if Tech hadn't beaten the eventual national champions, right? Crazy to think about.
In terms of playing above your head.
Yeah, that's absolutely the most impressive.
I'm not sure I've ever seen a game like that from Virginia Tech.
But as far as biggest, most important, it's not on the list. because Tech didn't do anything with it. It's like the 2003 Miami game.
Right.
Well, Tech lost 5 out of 6, 4 out of 5, something like that after that Miami game that year.
Yep.
And, they went on to have a 7-6 season if you include the bowl win after beating Ohio State. So, and at that point, it was the end of Beamer's career. You knew either the next year or the year after was going to be his last year, right? So it's not like you could capitalize on it from a recruiting standpoint. Basically, what that game turned out to be was a nice late career moment in time for Frank Beamer.
Yeah,
that's what that game meant.
And a game that's a lot of fun to talk about,
right?
You know, because you go back, and I remember just watching it last night, just going, wow, wow, And I remember the play down the sideline where Brewer ran out and he flipped it. Rogers caught it on the sideline with like 3 guys all around.
There's a one story. Brewer got clobbered in that game.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how he survived it. And they were out to get him. They knew if they put him out, they were going to win the game probably.
Yeah.
So he took one hit one time by like 2 of them at the same time, 2 Ohio State defensive players at once, and he's on the ground and he hears them saying, "Oh, we finally got him. We finally put him out." And he said when he heard that, he had to get up. And he got up and finished the game. Yeah. I've heard at the end of that game, once the emotion wears off, the adrenaline wears off, after the game, he couldn't even carry his own bag back to the team bus. Like Lester Carlin had to do it for him. He was so beat up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what happened the next year. We had the 17-14 lead,
right.
And then
so that game. You talk about the pick against Georgia Tech 2 weeks later, the loss the next week against East Carolina. Tech beat Ohio State, but it broke Brewer for most of that season.
Yeah.
That game was so physically taxing on him because he's not a big guy at all. He was listed as 6 foot 200. 5'11", 190, 195 probably, something like that. So not a big guy, and those Ohio State dudes were huge, and they were just blasting him.
Yeah.
And that broke him for half the season probably.
So it came at a price, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
That probably was a better team than 6-6, but Ohio State broke the starting quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they did the same thing the next year.
Yeah. They literally knocked him out
right.
That one.
Yeah.
Broke his collarbone. Yeah. And that just, when you think of tough quarterbacks, Jim Druckenmiller's tough in a different way. He was a big, huge guy. Al Clark was tough because he just always played through injury. And
Logan Thomas was tough because he was a human battering ram.
Right. Yeah, and there's different kinds of tough, and he's a different kind of tough because, if you and I were in the same room with him, you wouldn't say you wouldn't point at him and say he's a Division I quarterback and these other 2 guys aren't. So a lot of respect. For Michael
I don't know how he got up from some of that stuff. He got up from that Ohio State game in particular.
Yeah.
All right. It was fun. It really was fun. One more fun bit we were talking about when you left the room. UVA got some new logos, and there is a lot of controversy from both schools about it. And I've heard a lot of good things from Virginia Tech fans that actually like the new logos.
I actually thought it looked pretty cool, to be honest.
And then the UVA fans are absolutely destroying it.
Right.
So one of the things that most people know this, that Sportswear is the parent company of Tech Sideline. It's also the parent company of the Sabre. So when we log into and the message boards are all hosted on the same system, kind of like Rivals and 247 and all that. So when we log into the back end, one of the things that gets shown on the back end of the message boards, one of the things that's shown in the admin suite is number of posts in the last 2 hours. And for Tech Sideline, that's across all boards. For Tech Sideline, we're running 150 to 200 posts every 2 hours. I log into the admin system, not knowing anything was going on, and there's like 800 posts on the Sabre in the last 2 hours.
And you're like, well, okay, what happened in UVA sports?
What's going on with UVA? Oh man, and Carla Williams is I think she's an outstanding athletic director, but oh man,
she got it hard for this one.
She got raked over the coals for that one.
And I was just reading the comments on the Twitter video that they released for it.
Yes,
and they were just hilarious. I mean, you could just scroll it for hours.
The whole changing of logos, and I go back to when Virginia Tech changed their university logo. if you have to make a huge presentation explaining why you did that, you probably shouldn't have done it. What you need to do if you change a logo is, here's the new logo. We did it because we think it looks better. If you have to do any more than that,
we were bored.
Right. If you have to do any more than that, then you shouldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm. So, do you remember what year we did the new Tech Sideline logo, the one we use now? Was that like 2014?
It was about 2014.
Yeah,
thereabouts.
It was not met with the disgust that these were met.
No. Well, good God, how long did it take us to come up with it?
Well,
I'm sure it came up. It took them a long time and cost a lot of money and things like that.
Well, we worked with Kevin Jones had just started his design firm, and they were called Void Design House at the time. They're called Joba now. And so, we were one of Kevin's first jobs, and I remember going through the process with Kevin. It took a while, and it cost some money because, that dude's got some talent, and he's also got the pieces of paper from Virginia Tech that say he's got the education. And, when we rolled our logo out, it was well received. There were some people got hung up on something about the C and the H. I'm not sure what, but the negative feedback was very mild compared to Virginia Tech's school logo and these.
Now, to be fair, I mean, this is a cool logo, I think. Our old logo wasn't.
Well, we didn't really have a logo.
Well, I mean, it was
just
Tech
Sideline written out in some font.
There was a TSL thing, but it wasn't. It wasn't the brand of the site.
It wasn't like it was a beloved brand that we were replacing.
No, it was nothing. Now the thing is, I like Virginia Tech's VT logo. I think UVA's regular Cross Sabres logo was pretty cool. I mean, when I played for Chatham High School, we were the Chatham Cavaliers, and we had a C with the Cross Sabres underneath the helmet. I mean, I think it's a cool look if done right with the right colors and everything like that.
And I believe one of the Liberty high schools, I don't know if it's Bethel or Liberty Bethel. Or
a ton of high schools do it.
Yeah, they're the Minutemen, and they had two crossed rifles.
Right.
So that logo, and by the way, that UVA logo was, if I remember my UVA lore correctly, that logo was created by Matt Welsh, George Welsh's son.
You're kidding.
You didn't know that?
I don't think I knew that.
Matt Welsh used to work for Sports War.
Yeah, I remember him.
And that was a great design. The concept and the execution were outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it's a good design. So I mean, when you change something, you better make sure you get it right. If you change something that's already good, you better make sure you make it better.
Yeah.
So obviously, this has to go through multiple adults, right? So the designers, multiple people at UVA had to see it and say, yeah, we think this is the right way to go. And then Carla Williams ultimately has to approve it. I assume you show it to Tony Bennett. You show it to Bronco Mendenhall.
And they're like, I can work with this.
I can work with that. But if either one of them had stunk up a fuss about it, particularly Tony Bennett, if Tony Bennett had been like, no, I'm not doing this, they wouldn't have been able to do it, right? Maybe not so much.
Coaches don't care about that stuff.
They don't care as much about that stuff, I don't think.
Yeah.
But the point being is that none of those people really had their pulse on the UVA fan base.
I don't know. I just know that, yes, the Pontiac Aztec did get designed and put on the market. These things happen.
Every now and then I still see one. And I'm like, what were they thinking? Yeah.
Oh, man. So it's a difficult discussion to have because it's an audio podcast and our TV is out. And I don't know if Malcolm's putting the logos into the live feed or anything like that.
Just look it up and it'll come up.
Yeah.
You got the hat and the Sabres and then the guy, I guess, leaning over.
Yeah, it's the
yeah. That was the best meme I saw. Was the guy from the UVA Notre Dame game, the student that was leaning over the wall with his head down, and somebody photoshopped the new logo onto that. Oh, it was just perfect.
That was Nick. You talked about when they rolled the logos out on their official Twitter feed. Just the comments.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Right? People badmouth Twitter. Twitter's hysterical.
Okay, it's hysterical.
It is. Yeah. It's entertaining.
I rarely find Twitter to be anything in between. Like it's either great or awful.
Yeah, there is no in between.
There's not like I don't scroll through there and have a ho-hum experience on Twitter. But I'm like, God, this is the stupidest stuff I've ever read. Or
you're laughing like crazy.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's the biggest controversy of the week for both. I don't know. They showed some of their newer jerseys, and we didn't even talk about the font. And someone put up the font right next to our old font.
So UVA's new font is it
like
a
a carbon
squeezed?
copy.
Is it a squeezed version of the Tech font?
There's a few letters that are different.
I remember one time they came out on the field to enter Sandman, and everybody made fun of them. Like, how could you possibly do that?
So it's that old thing of, hey man, can I use your paper for my paper? It's like, yeah, just change it up so it doesn't look exactly the same. Right.
I remember when JMU did something with their bridge on their campus, and it looks like the Torgerson Bridge also, and someone said that. But yeah, I mean, UVA's they're just sometimes really easy to make fun of, but it is what it
themselves.
It is what it is. I personally kind of think the logos are pretty cool.
I think they're fine. I don't know if I was a UVA fan, I wouldn't want to change.
Right.
Yeah.
But as an outsider,
and it's not like they changed their main logo.
I'll put it this way. Right. I'll put it this way. If I was starting a football program from scratch and somebody came to me with that, and I was like, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
All right. So I'm rustling my papers here. I apologize to people who are listening, and I've got.
Are we going NFL draft?
Yeah, we need
next?
to go back to the draft stuff because Ox
Little
VT
Ox.
came out with some good info. Now this is interesting, and this is for you Texas recruits. Let's see if we can name all of them.
Yeah, all of you that are watching.
Robert Wooten, Alec Bryant, Demetrius Davis, Latrell Neville, and anyone else who's thinking about coming on board.
Millions of others that Virginia Tech is recruiting right now.
So Ox researched it, and the Houston area 2020 NFL draft picks. The Houston area 2020 NFL draft picks. There were, let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4,
10.
5, 6. There were 10 guys drafted from the Houston area, anywhere from 17th overall to number 184. And actually, 9 of them are between 17th overall and 72nd. Mm-hmm. And 72nd is...
That's third round.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's early, mid-third round. So
very early.
So that's 9 guys, yeah. Because there are 32 teams, right? 32 picks per round.
Thereabouts. At some point, you get some compensatory,
compensatory picks.
That's how Keene was 101, but also in the third round still.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So Ox broke it down by area code around Houston. All right, and the 281 area code is shared by Robert Wooten, Alec Bryant, and Latrell Neville. 281, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys drafted from that area code. Demetrius Davis is from the 832 area code, and there were 2 guys drafted.
But they were 17th and 20th overall. Now, the coup de grace is, out of these 10 guys, how many of them played for Texas or Texas A&M?
Or Texas A&M.
Yeah, what would your guess be?
If I was just going to guess, I would say probably 3 or 4.
Yeah, that's what I would probably guess. Yeah. But the real answer is 0.
0. None of those guys actually went to Texas or Texas A&M.
I'm not going to read every player's name because I can't read my own handwriting, but I can read the school names. So these 10 players went to, in order of which they were drafted: Oklahoma, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, TCU, LSU, Minnesota, Oklahoma, Houston, Baylor.
Minnesota, who was that?
That was Antoine Winfield Jr. Do you remember Antoine Winfield Sr.? He was a defensive back for Ohio State back when I was a kid.
Wow.
Yep.
So he went from I'm curious if he transferred to Minnesota or if that's where he started. I don't expect you to know that or research that. It's the question that comes to mind. So that was interesting. And let's see. So Ox also put a chart out on his Twitter feed, and he is OX_VT on Twitter. Hokies in the NFL draft during the 27-year bowl streak. So he's got it broken out by team, and he also had it broken out by position. Who wound up with that printout?
I don't have that.
I don't have it.
I may have to get up here and go look for it.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of DBs. We know that.
Yeah, we won't drill down into the per team too much, but the leading teams are, like, if you had to guess, which teams would you say have drafted the most Hokies?
I mean, I would say Redskins. Yeah, That's definitely in the top.
Or Buffalo.
there's 2 other that are actually more.
Buffalo has drafted 6 Hokies, and Atlanta has drafted 6 Hokies.
Yep.
And so you can. I wonder how many I could name for Atlanta: Vic, D'Angelo Hall, Kevin McAdam, Jimmy Williams, right?
Jimmy Williams.
Yeah, and I can't remember the other 2.
Matt Lair, I think.
That rings, or Dave Cadella.
He didn't get drafted.
Okay. Buffalo, 6 guys. Bruce Smith.
Oh, no. This is 27-year ball streak.
Oh, you're right. During the ball streak, correct. So Tremaine Edmonds.
Teller.
Wyatt Teller. Did they didn't draft Cam Phillips? They free agent signed him, I think.
Was Logan drafted?
Yes.
I think they drafted
But
Logan.
no. He got drafted by Arizona originally.
Yeah.
Billy Connolly back in the day.
Yeah. And it's not just that. It's that Tyrod Taylor also played there.
He drafted. He got drafted by the Ravens. Yeah.
So guys, a lot of guys go through there. Cleveland's drafted 5. Minnesota's drafted 5. That's interesting. San Francisco's drafted 5. That includes Jim Druckenmiller. Washington's drafted 5. Kendall Fuller. Probably.
So who's the only team that hasn't drafted anybody? And they're just one team that hasn't drafted a Tech player.
I think it's Evan Hughes' team, right?
Yeah, the Jets. Maybe that's why they stink. Sorry,
they start drafting. Now they did Von Hebron. I don't remember if Von Hebron was no, that's the Eagles. He was with the Eagles. I take that back. Sorry about Kenny Lewis Sr., I believe, played for.
I believe he did play for the Jets back in the 70s.
Vic had 1 year stint with them, I think, and when his final, when he played for everybody in the league.
Yeah, as he was doing his tour around the league at the end of his career. So
everybody plays for the Jets when they shouldn't be playing anymore.
Malcolm, how many minutes are we in here?
Hour 14.
Wow. Okay, we should take questions like right now.
Malcolm.
Yeah. So ask a question, and I'm going to look for that printout of draftees by position.
All right, let me adjust my microphone.
All right.
Leo Monroe asks, is there any way for coaches to train with masks on or with players in groups of 10 or less during quarantine? Or if not, how are they staying in shape?
Well, I mean, you can. It would be frowned upon, clearly. You better not film your workout and put it on social media, I would say. You would get shamed big time, for sure. Yeah, I think they're doing everything by Zoom right now. I mean, most of them aren't here. Some are. I bet every strength and conditioning coach in the country is coming up with creative routines. And some of it comes down to what players have access to. Some players do have access to home gyms. Some don't. Some are like me, and they're doing pull-ups off tree limbs. So this is going to be the same for everybody, though.
Yeah, and if they could go back and start this process over again, knowing how long it's going to last, I wonder if they would ship equipment to some of the players.
That's illegal. Probably.
Yeah.
The NCAA would make it illegal. Okay. They would pass a rule. All right, so Virginia Tech did that video, put together that video of all their players working out at home, right? They thought it'd be cool to show how hard their players are working when they're away. And they put out the video, and then the NCAA came out and said, new rule, you can't do that anymore. So, yes, I guarantee you if the NCAA found out schools were doing that, they would...
But if Ohio State was doing it, they'd say, what a neat idea.
Well, they would wait until Ohio State already shipped their equipment, and then they would pass the rule. Yeah.
That's right. So I don't know that we really answered your question, Leo.
But I mean, this is why this situation is it's very important that you recruit self-motivated players, guys that want to work out and embrace situations like this.
Yeah, like you heard me talking earlier, I've lost some muscle. I haven't been self-motivated so far. You know, I'm the guy that likes to go to the gym.
Right.
Whereas Chris has been finding a way to make it happen.
Even me, man. I've got to have a personal trainer there for outdoors stuff. I mean, well, the weather stinks.
Yeah,
I was actually going to do it yesterday, but the wind was blowing 40 miles an hour, and it was cold all day.
I think the wind's been blowing for 6 weeks straight now.
Yeah.
Yep, very annoying. All right, thanks for the question, Leo.
Clark Rulin says Vic played for the Jets.
I don't know.
He did. We said that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we did.
But he didn't get drafted by him.
No.
We're talking about being drafted.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I could not find the printout from Ox, but trust me, it's like 28 DBs drafted out of Virginia Tech, and the next highest position is like 14.
Yeah, I think it's
Which is
4
probably
tight
wide
ends.
receiver.
I think Keene was our 4th.
Yeah, I
tight
think
end.
Keene's the highest drafted Virginia Tech tight end.
By the way, the
he
thing
was.
we forgot to mention about Keene, and I read this and I have not fact checked it. Apparently, Bill Belichick has never traded away a future draft pick,
I have no idea.
and he did to get Dalton Keene.
How about that?
What?
I trust Bill Belichick in utilizing his players.
He's
Yeah.
generally a pretty good talent evaluator, it seems.
He does pretty good.
All right, what else you got, Malcolm?
Alan Potts asks, logistically, how many sports can you really play in the spring?
Yeah,
How many can you cram?
that's a great question, and I wish I had the answer to that. How many support staff can you?
'Cause you got
Do you have
ACC
to-
network
lacrosse,
strains.
you got
Right.
soccer.
I mean,
not soccer, fall.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, from logistically, that's a great question.
Well, it's really a question for an article,
It's a question for an athletic director.
not to be answered at the end of an already 80-minute podcast.
Right.
But that's a really good question, and you talk about the support personnel and the ACC network broadcasts you have to put together.
Yeah. Sorry. I know it's frowned upon to cough these days, but my allergies are acting up this weekend. I'm going to catch hell at Kroger when I go later today.
But you were getting ready to say something.
Yeah, I was. Maybe that can be a Q&A question for this week. Maybe I can do some research this week and ask some people who I feel like would know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a really good question.
You know,
Just
Tom Gabbard would be a good one to ask about that because he's heavily involved in game day operations.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a really cool question.
I mean, you get to the point where you cram everything. I mean, what if you're playing a men's basketball game, a football game, a softball game, and a lacrosse game all on the same day or something?
Now, for the spring football game, we've seen them play softball and baseball at home.
Yeah.
Sometimes on the same day as
Yeah.
the spring game.
Sure.
But a spring game's not as big as a
It's not televised most
Right.
of the time. It's there's 30 to 40,000 people there instead of 60.
So who asked that question again, Malcolm? Something Potts. Alan
That's
Potts.
a great question.
So Whit Babcock, Alan Potts has a question for you.
Yeah.
All right, one more, Malcolm.
All right, we'll do one more. Leo actually had one again I wanted y'all's opinion on. Is our bowl streak technically broken?
No more technical than Florida State's was until
Right.
until they finally
Yeah, until
actually
they finally
didn't
actually lost it. Yeah.
go.
No.
I would say no.
If you
It
don't
has an
play a season.
asterisk next to it.
Well, remember the Braves won 14 straight division championships, but they didn't finish the 94 season.
Right.
That's not their fault.
So I would say no.
Yeah.
It counts. It's going to count whenever it happens. You know, yeah, I believe the way it's phrased is they've gone to something like 27 straight bowls. They didn't say they've gone to bowls in 27 straight years.
Yeah.
We can take one more.
Actually, we should throw in the one from Evan Hughes. Will Keene end up hurting my Jets in the long run?
I don't get it. How can
No, they're in the same division.
Yeah.
He's
Oh,
about to wreck it.
of course.
Oh, man.
Well, maybe the Jets should actually draft some Virginia Tech players to combat that, Evan.
Well, it gets back to that thing about I could never fully enjoy Bruce Smith's NFL career because he was always whipping the Dolphins, always helping to keep the Dolphins from making another Super Bowl and winning another AFC championship. And then Keene goes to – I hadn't even thought about that angle yet.
Now, here's the interesting one. Trevon Hill got picked up undrafted free agent by the Patriots.
By
also.
the Patriots.
And speaking of other news, how about Wake Forest firing Danny Manning
Oh,
on
yeah,
April
I forgot.
25th?
On April
Dude, that's-
25th and not announcing it because
No.
that's just a bad look during the coronavirus. Oh, wait a minute. So never mind. I'm getting ahead of myself.
So was there some kind of contractual thing there where they owe him less after a buyout than after April 24th or something like that? That doesn't make any sense.
I haven't had a chance to read
I haven't
up on
had a chance to read about it. Otherwise, I mean, this is like firing Seth Greenberg. It's the same time frame, except you fire him during the coronavirus when you can't even go anywhere you can't actually sit down with a coach face to face. You can have a Zoom conversation. I get it. there's a lot of things you can do with Zoom.
Now, this is the kind of thing I would expect from Ron Wellman, but he's not their athletic director anymore, right?
No, he's not.
Poor Isaiah Wilkins gets left out to dry now. He doesn't have a coach now.
That's odd.
Wow.
That's just, the whole thing is just strange.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if the buyout dropped on somewhere around that date.
Right.
Ugh. That's the kind of thing an agent would structure, that the buyout drops 3 or 4 weeks after the season's over. Go ahead, fire me.
Right.
And they did it.
Yeah.
So, all right, I think we can wrap that one up.
Yep.
So, Nick, what'd you think of your debut?
It's pretty good.
Hey, you know what? One thing we didn't talk about is what are you going to do if classes are online this fall? Have you decided, or?
I'm going to try it. I'll stay online, do it online classes. I know you want to.
Not a big fan of that.
Not that. I don't know. I just feel like it'd be a big old mess if I.
Well, give you something to do.
Yeah.
I guess
because right now, I know we're supposed to be doing classwork, but I know Annalise isn't doing classwork.
Right.
Our seniors are really not doing classwork. Mostly because we're all mad that our senior year got cut short. So we're all like, well, we don't want to do anything school related because it sucks. So, I'm pretty bored without doing stuff. So I think it'd be good to do that. For me, I guess that's my own opinion, but I don't know. Of course, obviously, it still has to get canceled for me to really make that decision.
And it depends on what the specifics are.
Yeah, they're not going to know until June. Is probably the way.
Yeah, I think mid-June is
the rumor. Yeah. So.
And
I know Sands came out yesterday.
No, it's interesting, and this goes back to whether the season gets played and things being different at different schools and everything like that. I ran into somebody in Kroger the other day who I know, and who, I forget if it was somebody who's related to or someone he knows, but she runs track at Columbia. Columbia's in New York City, right? Mm-hmm. And New York has basically told Columbia, look, if this thing drags on, we might need your dorms this fall for healthcare workers that we import from out of town because we have so many cases and things like that. So that shuts Columbia down right there, possibly, right? So that's not something that Blacksburg would have to would deal with. But It is saying, like, if Columbia and Virginia Tech were in the same conference, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to be things like that make this decision that we're not even thinking about.
It's one thing to say, hey, everybody, move your football season to the spring. And I think we talked about this on the last podcast. Not every university has control of its football stadium.
That's true.
And there may be other things scheduled.
Miami, for one example.
Yeah. I mean,
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. There's 2 in the ACC right there.
Right. I mean, it's just a lot of complicated matters. Yeah. So we'll see.
All right, appreciate it, folks. That was episode 126. Is that right?
That's correct.
Nick, thanks for filling in, and we'll probably have you do some more. As more news comes out and we got more stuff to talk about. This is going to get. I think it's going to get really interesting here in at least a month and a half. As soon as a month and a half from now, maybe maybe
stuff
sooner.
From the NCAA.
Yep.
And Tech itself.
Yeah, that's right. So thanks again to Jonathan Fisher of the Fisher Law Firm for sponsoring, and thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.